What is good? It is your boy, Mr. Friends from MrFriendsProductions.com. And like, comment, and subscribe if you learn anything from this video. So, in this module series, we are covering Midi and everything that you can do with it to make trap beats. Okie dokie. So, first off, Midi stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface, okay? But it's how you apply it that makes all the difference. So, let's get into it. So, I'm going to use my Mr. Frenzy trap loops. Pack number 1, and you can get this pack absolutely free in the description below. Okie dokie? Okay, so let's get into it. So first off, MIDI is just information. I'll show you what I mean. Over here, I'm going to use this. This specific MIDI, and this is what we're going to be working with. Now, this is what this loop sounds like with the instruments that I used. If we listen to individualized components with the loops, that's the chords, that's the piano, that's the pizzy, and that's the pluck, okay? Now, what's great about these loop packs as well is that you have the MIDI broken down as well, just in case you don't particularly care for the sounds. And that's where there's a lot of power in using MIDI and MIDI packs and all that sort of stuff. The great thing about my personal loop packs is that you get the loops, you get them broken down, and you also get the MIDI as well, so you can manipulate the MIDI. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to do that. So first off, let me take these chords. So to be able to get to the MIDI, if you're using this pack, all you have to do is click on MIDI, and then you just take this file and you drag it all over here to your channel rack sampler, okay? Now, the channel rack sampler is basically where your VST is going to be, and I'll show you what that means in just a second. So, if I drag over these chords, voila, here are all the chords right here. So, instead of taking all of the time to be able to learn all the theory and all that sort of stuff that can be quite complex, especially if you're just starting out, you can just drag and drop in these chord progressions from the MIDI loop pack. And voila, basically you have all the work done, especially if you just like the way that the chord progression sounds to begin with. Okie dokie. So here we have the chord progression, and the information is inputted into my piano roll, okay? Now, here's the thing. Right now, I don't have any form of VST that is playing this information. So if we play it, it doesn't make any sound. You see what I mean? And that's not good, because obviously we want people to hear these chords, you know what I mean? So all you have to do is you just have to right click on sampler, you have to go to replace, and for right now we're just going to use an FL keys just to kind of hear what this chord sounds like in its most generic form possible. So basically using just a generic piano, okay? So let's click on FL keys and let's have a listen. Okay, so this is what the chord sounds like just in a generic piano form. Now, one, it sounds slightly different because we're using a different sound. If we listen to the loop the way that it was, we can notice that the sound that I use is actually decays. You know, it sounds like the sound is longer. You know what I mean? And if we wanted to do that using the FL keys, what we could do is we could just take all of these notes here and we could stretch them out, okay? So right then and there, you have control over how the sound is just by manipulating the MIDI. You see what I mean? So now if you take a listen, you see what I mean? So now, because this piano doesn't have as long as a decay as this sound that I used, we can actually get it to have that sort of longer sound just by dragging out the notes, okay? And that's a great thing about using MIDI. So that's using the chords. But now, let's see if we can actually go and start inputting in these other sounds. Now, what I'm going to do for this case is I'm not going to use FL keys. I'm going to use something in Citrus, okay? I'm just going to use FL Studio stock plugins just in case you don't have, like, you know, like the Contacts, the, Analog Labs, the Omnisphere, and all that sort of stuff, okay? So I'm just use Citrus because most likely you're going to have Citrus, okay? So let's load up Citrus. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for a piano. Should I go for a piano? No, let me go for a pluck. So first off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, take this pluck here, and I'm going to put it on my citrus. So now this is what the MIDI looks like for this certain pluck. Let's take a listen to the actual loop for the pluck. Standard type of pluck. Now, I uploaded this VST, and by default, let's put it in default mode. Let's listen to the MIDI just within the default setting that Citrus gives us. So obviously it's just really actually it kind of sounds like just a sine wave to me, which is totally fine. So basically that is just its most generic form when it comes to audio. So basically any form of VST that you put it, especially a VST that is a synthesizer, it's going to sound like that. But what we can do is we can actually change the sound of this MIDI just by going to the presets. Okay, so this is a pluck sound. So I'm actually going to choose a pluck sound that Citrus has to kind of hear, my options. Okay. Okay, that sounds good, but let me see if I actually have some other options here. So basically what I'm doing here, if you haven't used Citrus before, is basically you go over here and you right click on that tab there, and you have all of these options to choose from, okay? Now I'm in the plucked department, so let me start from here. Definitely don't want to use that because it sounds out of key. That sounds okay to my ears. Let's hear what it sounds with the chords. Sounds pretty cool. Let me see my other options. That sounds pretty cool. Okay, so basically I can just keep changing the sound over and over again to basically whatever I want. So what I suggest if you're just starting out, just keep surfing your sounds until something sounds good. Now, if you are looking for a particular sound, like a sound that you have in your head, and you're just like, oh my God, I want this to sound like, a guitar, or if I want this to sound like, a certain specific sound, try and work with what you got instead of trying to find that perfect sound that's in your head, because trying to find that perfect sound that's in your head is going to be very, very difficult for you to find, okay? And the reason why is because that sound in your head doesn't exist, because it's just in your head. It doesn't have any form of physical properties or anything like that, okay? So try to do just the best that you can by using the sounds that you have, especially if you don't have an expansive library of sounds, okay? So we have this. Now I'm just going to label this pluck. Now another great thing about MIDI is that the MIDI basically stretches out to any form of BPM that I want, okay? So right now I'm at 140, even though that this loop pack is at 128, okay? Now, if I put it down to 128, this would be the way that I wrote this loop. So that's the actual tempo. Now, if I wanted this to be like really, really fast for whatever reason, I can put it up to like 160. And the thing is that it doesn't lose any of the quality because it's just information, okay? So basically we can go crazy if you wanted to. Bring it up to 219. Now, the problem is that to make a song that fast, it wouldn't be bueno. We could also go crazy too and actually put it down here. If you wanted an extremely slow song. But for making just standard trap, just, stick within the normal parameters. If you're going around 80 to 110, you're going to be in double time. If you are doing around 120 to 160, 170, you're going to be in halftime. Now you probably had no idea what I meant by that, but I'll explain it in a later module. Okay, that's more like an advanced thing. I actually think I covered it a little bit in the programming jump stuff. Anyway, don't have to worry about that. Okay, so this is the great thing about using MIDI. Okay, you can manipulate the sound. You can actually, you can make the song faster. You can make it slower. It's just information and all that sort of stuff. Okay, do I have anything else here? Yeah, no, that's just about it. Okay, so in the next one, what I'm going to do is we're going to focus mostly on chords. Okay. and changing the chords and all that sort of stuff. So this is Mr. Frenzy from MrFrenzyProductions.com, and I'll see you in the next video. Please like and comment and subscribe if you learned anything, or even if you didn't.